In the town of Havenridge, the lighthouse bell has cracked, and with every night, the hour grows stronger. Clara Reyes, her daughter Sofia, and Marcus fight to hold back the Watcher, a shadow that demands one life to spare the many. Secrets carved in stone, voices from the sea, and a bargain that can never be trusted. This is Book 2 of the Havenridge series, The Shattered Bell. One of the thrilling free audiobooks at 10 chapters. Lean back and let's step into the story. Havenridge, The Shattered Bell. Chapter 1. The Bell's Scar. The lighthouse had always been Havenridge's sentinel, rising from the cliffs like a bone the sea refused to bury. The town liked to tell itself the bell at the top had gone silent after the last great storm, its voice lost to weather and time. But Clara Reyes knew better. She had seen the crack with her own eyes. A week after Emily was gone, Marcus convinced her to climb the tower. The climb had been suffocating. Spiral stairs slick with salt, air heavy with rust. At the top, sunlight bled across the bronze. The fissure ran along the bell's side, thin but sharp like a wound that hadn't healed. When Clara brushed her fingers against it, she felt a vibration. Not sound exactly, but a low hum that prickled along her skin. Marcus had heard it too. He took a picture and zipped it into his jacket, as if afraid the evidence might vanish if left in the open air. "It's alive," he whispered. Clara didn't argue. Weeks had passed since Emily vanished into the hour. To the rest of Havenridge, life had folded itself neatly again. Mr. Rort swept his stoop. The diner served its usual pie. Children raced down Alder Street with books under their arms. But Clara noticed the changes. Street names stuttering between versions. Neighbors forgetting details they once insisted on. A boat that had always been green suddenly remembered as blue. Little slips that meant nothing, unless you were counting at 3:03 in the morning. That was when the bell hummed. That was when Sofia walked. The first time, Clara had found her daughter at the front door. Her small hand rested on the knob, eyes wide, but unseeing. Her rabbit hung from the other arm, ears brushing the floor. "It's louder now," Sofia whispered. Her throat tightened. "What is?" "The bell." Sofia's voice was distant, her lips barely moving. "It hums when the door wants to open." Clara gathered her close, whispering the rhyme she'd used when Sofia was younger. "Hold my hand, count to 10. If the wind knocks once, don't let it in." On 10, Sofia blinked as if surfacing from water. Clara carried her back to bed and sat on the floor beside her until dawn broke gray over the curtains. Sofia slept peacefully. Clara didn't sleep at all. Marcus met her at the library the next morning. He carried his notebook, his camera slung over his shoulder, and looked more frayed than usual. "Donnie Pike swears his radio sang to him," he said without greeting. Martha's voice. "She's been dead 10 years. "Dreams," Clara muttered, shelving books. "The tide doesn't dream. It was out at the wrong hour." Marcus leaned on the counter, lowering his voice. "And the crack, it's longer." Clara looked up sharply. "I went back this morning, took another picture. You don't need to see it. You'll feel it soon enough." The certainty in his voice made her stomach twist. That evening, Clara made pasta for Sofia, who ate while humming to her rabbit. The house was quiet, too quiet, every sound muffled, as though waiting. At 3:02, Clara was already awake, standing in the hallway. The clock on the stove clicked to 3:03. The air shifted. Sofia's door creaked open. She stepped into the hall, rabbit clutched tight, eyes glassy. She moved toward the front door with dreamlike precision. Clara caught her close. "Not tonight," she whispered. Sofia tilted her head, listening to something Clara couldn't hear. "He hears through the bell." Clara pulled her close, arms shaking. "He doesn't get you, not while I breathe." Her daughter's voice softened. "If the bell breaks, he won't need it. He'll be everywhere." A thin, piercing note slid through the house, high and sharp, rattling the pictures on the wall. From far out beyond the cliffs came an answering rumble, deep and patient, like something vast shifting beneath the sea. Clara held Sofia tighter and whispered into her hair, "We hold." The sound lingered for one impossible moment and faded. The house remembered itself. The clock moved on. Clara carried her daughter back to bed, tucked the rabbit under her chin, and kissed her forehead. Sofia stirred, murmuring, "He can't come if we don't let him." Clara sat in the dark until the horizon bled pale with morning light. When Havenridge awoke, the town carried on. Children walked to school, nets were hauled from boats, coffee steamed on the diner counter. No one spoke of cracks or voices or nights that bent like glass. But Clara carried the sound in her chest, the high, humming note of a wounded bell, and the deep reply from somewhere waiting. And she knew the storm wasn't finished. End of Chapter 1. Chapter 2. The Voice in the Waves. The next morning dawned gray and sharp, the tide dragging heavy against the pilings, as though the sea itself was burdened. Clara pushed open the library's back door and inhaled the brine-thick air. It clung to her skin, sour with something metallic. She thought of the chalk on the lighthouse wall. One must remain. The words had stayed with her through the night, louder than her own heartbeat. By mid-morning, Marcus came striding through the stacks, a thermos under an arm and a folded note in his hand. His face looked drawn, his usual grin lost somewhere in the fog. He said, "Another one." Clara took the note, her stomach tightening as she read. "To the Havenridge Herald. I heard her voice this morning, clear as a bell. She was singing my name. Tell them it was Martha, my Martha. But Martha's been gone 15 years. Clara looked up. "Who sent this?" "Captain Miller," Marcus said grimly. "The man barely leaves his house anymore. Now he swears his dead wife called to him under his boat." Clara closed the note carefully. "It's starting again." Marcus rubbed the back of his neck. "This is worse. Last time people vanished clean, like chalk erased from a slate. Now it's voices, echoes. The hour's not just swallowing, it's leaking." That evening, Clara walked Sofia home from school. The fog had rolled in early, swallowing the streets. "Why are people whispering about the sea?" Sofia asked. Clara tightened her grip on her daughter's hand. "What did you hear?" "Mrs. Kendall said her husband woke up singing. He didn't know the words, but he said it was a song she used to sing when she was young. She laughed about it, but her eyes looked scared." Clara's pulse skipped. The voices are spreading. They crossed the corner where Alder Street sloped down to the wharf. Even through the fog, Clara could see fishermen gathered, their faces pale, their eyes fixed on the water. She stopped, drawing Sofia back against her side. One of the men, Donnie Pike, stooped with age, stepped to the edge of the dock, hat clutched in his hands. "Martha?" he whispered, his voice shaking. That you?" The water rippled, though no wind moved it. A faint melody curled up from the surface, lilting, sweet. unbearably sad. Clara's breath caught. Sofia gripped her rabbit tighter. "It's not her, Mom!" Clara pulled her daughter close, heart hammering. The men leaned forward, entranced, their eyes glazed. Then the voice broke off. The harbor fell silent again. Donnie Pike blinked, confused, as if waking from a dream. What was I doing?" he muttered. The others murmured, shifting uncomfortably. They didn't look at each other. They didn't look at the water. That night, Clara sat at the kitchen table with the tidekeeper's journal spread before her. The entry she returned to again and again read, 3 for memory, 3 for blood, 3 for the sea. The keeper offers what is lost, but takes what is given. The sea remembers all names. She traced the lines with her finger, her hand trembling. The bells crack, the voices, the leaks. This wasn't the hour in full. This was its aftermath, its hunger finding new ways to feed. From upstairs, Sofia's voice drifted down. Not words, humming. Low, haunting, the same melody she had heard at the wharf. Clara ran, taking the stairs 2 at a time. Sofia sat on her bed, eyes half closed, lips moving with the tune of something impossibly old. When Clara touched her shoulder, she startled awake, the sound dying in her throat. "Did you hear it too?" Sofia asked, wide-eyed. "Yes, baby. I heard it." The clock on the nightstand ticked over, and Clara froze. 3:03. The house stilled, the air trembling with that faint crystalline hum, and somewhere far off, beyond the cliffs, the broken bell shuddered in sympathy. End of Chapter 2. Chapter 3. The Town That Forgets. The next morning, Clara tried to cling to normal. She packed Sofia's lunch, walked her to school, and made polite conversation with Mrs. Kendall on the steps. The woman's smile seemed thinner than usual, her eyes darting as if searching for something just beyond sight. "Strange weather, isn't it?" Mrs. Kendall said. Clara nodded. "The fog hasn't lifted in days." Mrs. Kendall hesitated. "Not just that. This morning I couldn't remember my son's birthday. I know it's in May, but when I tried to picture the date, the whole month just slipped. Has that ever happened to you?" Clara forced her face to stay calm. "Sometimes I forget things too." The lie sat heavy on her tongue. By midday, whispers moved through Havenridge like a tide. A street name swapped in casual conversation, though everyone swore it had always been that way. A diner regular ordered his usual, only to blink at the plate and insist it was wrong, though no one else remembered what he used to order. Marcus burst into the library, notebook open, his handwriting jagged and frantic. "It's spreading!" He dropped into a chair, rubbing his temples. "I went to interview Mrs. Lowe about her husband's fishing records. She looked at me like I was crazy. Said she never had a husband. I've known them both since I was 10, Clara. I used to mow their lawn." Clara's stomach clenched. "And her husband?" Marcus's voice cracked. "Gone. Like Pete Garvey. But worse, because I still remember him, and she doesn't." They sat in silence for a moment. The hum of the library lights was louder than usual. Clara pushed the tidekeeper's journal toward him. The passage glared from the page. "When the bell is cracked, the pact cracks with it. The hour will not wait for summoning. It will spill, seep, and soak until the town drowns in forgetting." That evening, Clara took Sofia for a walk, hoping the air would steady her nerves. They moved past the wharf, where gulls picked at scraps and men smoked in silence. Every face looked distracted, haunted. "Mom?" Sofia tugged at her sleeve. "That shop. Wasn't that the bakery?" Clara stopped. Where the bakery had stood for decades, now sat a boarded-up shopfront with peeling paint. The sign above the door read, "Caldwell's Dry Goods." "It was the bakery," Clara whispered. Sofia's eyes filled. "Then why don't they remember?" Clara pulled her daughter close. "Because the hour is leaking." Sofia stared into the fog, her small voice steady. "It's rewriting the town." That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She paced the living room, listening to the creak of the old floorboards. At 2:54, she sat by Sofia's door, bracing for what always came. The clock blinked to 3:03. The hum began sharper than before, threading through the walls like a violin string pulled too tight. Clara pressed her palms over her ears, but the sound sank deeper, into her bones. From upstairs came Sofia's voice, clear and calm. "They're not gone. They're in the hour, but the longer it leaks, the less they'll want to come back." Clara rushed in, heart hammering. Sofia sat upright in bed, eyes glossy, clutching her rabbit. "They're changing," she whispered. "They don't remember who they were." Clara knelt, cupping her daughter's face. "We'll stop it, I promise." But as she spoke, the dresser against the wall shimmered, its edges warping, as if the hour had brushed against it. For a heartbeat, it wasn't a dresser at all, but a doorway opening onto black water. Then it snapped back, ordinary wood and brass. The clock ticked to 3:04. And Clara wondered how much of Havenridge would be left when the town woke tomorrow. End of Chapter 3. Chapter 4. The Broken Ledger. The next day at the library, the air felt heavier than the fog outside. Clara moved slowly through the stacks, reshelving books, pretending her hands weren't shaking. Every time she touched the wood of the shelves, she expected it to ripple, to warp into something the hour wanted her to see. When she returned to the front desk, something stopped her. A book sat there, thick, bound in cracked leather, smelling faintly of salt. She hadn't put it there. No one had signed it out. Her name was written on a slip inside the front cover for Clara Reyes. She glanced around. The library was empty. Clara opened the cover. The first page was lined like a ledger filled with names, families she knew, families she didn't. But as she turned the pages, she realized the order was wrong. Names shifted, letters rearranged. Entire lines faded as she stared. On the third page, fresh ink bled through. A name appeared where none had been before. Emily Kavanagh. Clara froze. The letters pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. "Emily?" she whispered. Marcus arrived minutes later, camera strung around his shoulder, eyes bloodshot. She thrust the ledger toward him. "Tell me you see it." Marcus read, his mouth set in a grim line. "I see it. Emily Kavanagh. But Clara," his voice dropped. "No one else will." He reached for his notebook. The page where he'd written Emily's name last month was blank. He scribbled it again, heavy strokes, and looked up. "If this disappears, if I forget her—" "You won't," Clara said, though her own certainty faltered. That night, Clara dreamed of the lighthouse, the bell cracked and swollen, humming in the dark. And beneath it, standing ankle-deep in black water, was Emily, Her hair clung to her face, her clothes dripping. "You rang it wrong," she whispered. "You let the hour loose." I reached for her. "Emily, come back!" Emily shook her head. "I'm not gone. I'm underneath. But the longer I stay, the less I remember who I am." She stepped closer, her outline wavering like candlelight. "You have to choose, Clara. The bell needs a keeper. It was me for a while, but now I'm slipping." Clara's throat ached. "I won't let you fade." Emily's eyes lifted, dark and full of sorrow. "Then who will you give instead?" The sound of the bell split the dream, a deep toll that rattled Clara awake. She sat up in bed, breath ragged. The clock blinked at her. 3:03. From the hallway came the soft pad of footsteps. Clara lurched. "Sofia!" But it wasn't her daughter standing in the hall. It was Emily. Not solid, not whole, her edges frayed, her face pale and shimmering. She lifted one trembling hand. "Remember me," she whispered. And then she was gone. End of Chapter 4. Chapter 5. The Echoing Room. Sofia's pencil moved as if it already knew the lines. She sat cross-legged on the living room rug with her rabbit tucked into the crook of her arm, tongue caught at the corner of her mouth the way it did when she concentrated. Circles nested inside circles, a narrow rectangle, a small, careful X. Clara leaned over the back of the couch. "Homework?" Sofia shook her head without looking up. "A map." "To where?" "To the quiet place," she said, shading the innermost ring. "Under the bell. It wants us to listen from there." Marcus set his coffee on a coaster and crouched beside her. "You've never been under the bell, Squirt." Sofia finally looked up, unbothered. "It shows me," she said, as if that answered every question worth asking. Clara's skin prickled. Haven had been teaching them new meanings for impossible all month. "Show me," she said gently. Sofia tapped the page. The lighthouse was only suggested, a rectangle for the base, a thinner one stacked above. Below it, the spiral wound inward to a thicker line scratched at one edge. "That's a door," Sofia said, tapping the scratch. "But not like house doors. It's stuck to the ground." Marcus stood. "We go now, before the hour." Clara hesitated, then nodded. "Before it sings." Fog dragged its hem along the cliffs, leaving the grass dark and slick. The lighthouse hunched against the gray, like a tired animal that refused to lie down. Wind came off the water thin and metallic, humming in the railing wires. Clara carried a lantern and the tidekeeper's journal in her bag because not carrying them felt worse. Sofia led them to the tower's base and stopped in front of what Clara had always assumed was a haphazard square of patchwork concrete. She pressed her palm to it. The air under the slab answered with a hollow note, faint as knuckles on an old table. Marcus found an iron ring half buried in paint. He tugged. The slab lifted reluctantly, then swung up on a corroded hinge, coughing out a breath of cold salt. A ladder dropped into black. "Behind me," Clara said, heart banging. "Always behind me." The rungs were damp, the shaft narrow enough that the lantern's halo touched all four sides. 10 feet down, the ladder ended on stone. The chamber felt older than the tower. Tools had never made walls like these. Hands had. The floor was cut with a shallow spiral channel, its surface darkly gleaming as if it remembered water. The lantern showed lines and curves incised everywhere. Circles within circles. the crudest bell you could draw with a knife, and words in a looping hand that looked like the Tidekeeper's script before time cracked it. Clara raised the light. Letters bit the stone with a certainty that made her throat tighten. 3 for memory, 3 for blood, 3 for the sea. Marcus traced the grooves with the back of a knuckle. Same inscription as the journal. Beneath the old words, newer scratches caught the light. Not careful, hurried. The letters crowded each other. One must remain. Clara's breath snagged. Another line, shallower, trembled beneath it. Remember me. Her mouth shaped a name without sound. Emily. The chamber vibrated, not with sound exactly, but with a pressure that turned the air to something you could mistake for glass. The spiral's center seemed to breathe. The lantern's flame thinned, then steadied. "Do you hear it?" Marcus whispered. Clara did. A high filament, thin as wire, and pure as wet crystal. Beneath it, just beneath, another tone. Lower and patient, a distant body answering. The bell above, something vast beyond. Between them, braided so faintly she might have imagined it, a third thread. A girl's voice pulled thin by distance. "Don't ring it," that small thread seemed to say. "Not cracked. It opens. Hold instead. Hold fast." "Emily," Clara said under her breath, and the filament brightened as if pleased and pained at once. Sofia had stepped into the spiral without Clara seeing her. She stood with her hands a little away from her sides, eyes half closed, like a child balancing on a beam only she could see. "Sofia," Clara said too sharply. "Out." "Just a second," she murmured. "She hears me better here." Her fingers lowered toward the spiral's center and hovered a breath above the stone. The high tone jumped as if plucked. "Now," Clara said, softer. She lifted her daughter bodily clear and made herself say thank you with her eyes when Sofia didn't struggle. Marcus had drifted to an alcove cut into the wall. "Clara," he called, voice strangled with surprise. "Look." An oilcloth bundle lay there, bound with twine that forgotten it used to be string. Marcus set it on the floor and unwrapped it carefully. Inside lay 2 wooden wedges black with age, a collar and clevis rimmed in corrosion, a mallet worn smooth by hands, a tray of iron fittings, and a small lidded tin stamped with an anchor. He pried the tin open. The smell of pitch and tallow crept into the cold. "Bell dressing," he said, wonder cutting through his fear. "Old keepers used to salve a bell to weatherproof, to quiet resonance in storms. I thought that was a story." He touched the wedges reverently. "These aren't repairs. They're braces. You don't fix the break. You ease the stress around it." Clara pictured the hairline fissure running from the bell's lip towards its shoulder. "Weakened by time." The filament trembled, then steadied, as if agreeing and warning at once. Clara sank to the spiral's edge and set the lantern on the stone. "Emily," she said, not aloud and not inside exactly, "tell me how." The whisper thread brushed her mind like a current. Above, brace softly. Below, hold. When it swells, press. When it thins, don't chase. If it breaks... The voice snagged on something and frayed. "If it breaks, he won't need doors anymore." Marcus had gone still, eyes on the words incised above them. 3 for memory, 3 for blood, 3 for the sea. His voice came rough. Someone added 1 must remain later. Clara's hand found the newer scratching, "Remember me," and closed over it. The stone was cold through her skin. She did. The chamber made a very small sound. Approval, or grief, or both. Sofia tugged at Clara's sleeve. "She says we don't have to give anyone," the girl said, eyes bright and solemn. "She says a keeper is different than a trade. A keeper is someone who holds, not someone you throw." Marcus flinched like someone hit behind the ribs. "How long can we hold?" Sofia's answer was so quiet it might have been the air. "Until it's done. Or until we are." The filament sharpened. The lower tone rolled under it, nearer now, the way thunder rolls toward you across the flats. Time had a feeling in here. It pressed at Clara's back. "We go up," Clara said. "We set what we can before dark." They wrapped the bundle again and tied the twine with careful hands, as if the act of neatness mattered. The ladder rungs were colder on the climb out. Salt had gathered on the iron like frost. When Marcus shouldered the hatch close, the wind pawed at it once and then wandered away, bored. On the path, the tower loomed with the particular tired dignity of a thing that has done its job too long. The belfry windows didn't rattle yet. A gull sat on the rail and watched them, unafraid. Clara's phone buzzed in her pocket. An unknown number lit the screen. 2 words. "Hold fast." She didn't show Marcus. She didn't need to. He was already unpacking the oilcloth bundle again, laying wedges and collar and clevis on the path as if arranging instruments before surgery. Before the hour. "Before it sings," Clara echoed. Sofia slipped her hand into Clara's. "She says to hurry," the girl said, eyes bright and solemn. "She says she's tired." Clara squared her shoulders to the tower and felt the crack in the bell like a splinter under the town's skin. "We will," she told the stone, the sea, the voice braided through the filament. "We will hurry, and we will hold." Above them, something in the belfry shifted. Not sound, but weight deciding. The wind carried a thin thread of that high note down the stairs and into their faces. The hour was not here yet. It had sent a fingertip ahead. Clara lifted the bundle. Marcus took the rope. Sofia held the lantern steady with both hands, the rabbit tucked in her coat like a second small heart. They climbed. End of chapter 5. Chapter 6. The Keeper returns. The night had weight. Clara sat at the kitchen table with the tidekeeper's journal open, the lamplight turning its ink brown and weary. She traced the looping script for the 100th time. 3 for memory, 3 for blood, 3 for the sea. Beneath it, the added words still gnawed. 1 must remain. Sofia was upstairs, finally asleep, rabbit tucked under her chin. Marcus was out on the cliffs, chasing the hum with his camera and his notebooks, as if writing it down could pin it in place. Clara wanted to believe it could. The house ticked and shifted. The air had that charged quality she'd come to dread. Clara set her hand flat on the journal and whispered into the empty room. "Emily, if you're still there, I need you." The lights flickered. When Marcus returned, his face was pale, his shirt damp from fog. He said, "It's spreading. Not just the tower anymore. The piers, too. The water hums like it's tuned to the crack." Clara closed the book. "Then we brace harder." Marcus shook his head. "You don't understand. I lost hours tonight. Whole hours. Gone. I walked the pier, Looked at my watch, and it was suddenly past midnight. I think he's eating through me. Clara rose, heart thudding. Don't say that. Marcus laughed without humor. It's the truth, and maybe it's what he wants. A keeper, remember? If one must remain. No, Clara's voice cracked like the bell itself. We're not giving him anyone. Before Marcus could answer, the lamp went out. The house breathed once, long and slow. And then Emily stood in the doorway. She was paler than before, her outline trembling, but her braid hung damp as though she'd just come in from rain. Her eyes were darker, shadows tugging at the edges. Clara froze, half afraid that speaking would break her apart. Emily? Her voice was soft, scraped raw. I'm still holding, but the crack makes it harder. Every night, more slips through. He's learning to move in sound, not just fog. Marcus stared at her, stricken. Why show yourself now? Emily's gaze flicked toward Clara, then the stairs where Sofia slept. Because you don't have time left for comfort. He's pressing the bargain again. He'll tell you sacrifice is the only way. But the pact was never about trade. Clara's breath came uneven. Then what is it? Emily stepped closer, the air cooling with her. It's about keeping. The bell needed someone bound to it, someone to anchor the town when the hour swelled. That's what I was. That's why I stayed. Clara's chest tightened. And now? Her outline flickered, dimming, then brightening. Now I'm slipping. The crack makes it harder to hold. When it breaks... She stopped, her mouth trembling. When it breaks, no keeper will matter. The silence that followed pressed on all of them. Clara finally whispered, Emily, you said one must remain. Was that you asking us to remember you, or warning us what comes next? Emily's eyes filled with something too human for ghosts. Regret. Both. The lantern flickered back to life. Emily wavered, her form unraveling like smoke. She raised one hand, fingers trembling. Clara, if you can't hold him back, if the bell shatters, you must find another way. Don't let him write the town into his memory. Her shape thinned. Her voice stretched across the walls. Promise me. Clara's throat burned. I promise. And then Emily was gone. Marcus sat heavily, rubbing his temples. She looked worse. Clara lowered herself into the chair opposite him. Because she's tired. Because she's been carrying Havenridge alone. Marcus met her gaze, something resigned in his expression. Maybe it's my turn. If he wants a keeper. Clara slammed her hand on the table. Stop! Don't give him what he wants. The house groaned as if in sympathy. The hum deepened, rattling the glass in the windows. Sofia cried out upstairs. Clara bolted from the kitchen, Marcus on her heels. They found her standing in the hallway, eyes open but unfocused, rabbit clutched tight. Her voice was a whisper, but it filled the whole house. He's here. Clara knelt, gripping her shoulders. Soph, listen to me. You're safe. But the words didn't reach her. The child's gaze locked on something behind Clara. He says, we can be free if I go. Marcus swore. It's the Watcher. Clara pulled Sofia into her arms, fury lacing her fear. No! You hear me? He doesn't get you. The pressure in the house thickened. A shape stirred at the end of the hall, shadow bleeding into form, taller than the ceiling. The watcher leaned close, his voice a suggestion that scraped the mind. Keeper or child, one must remain. Clara's vision swum. Marcus braced himself against the wall, eyes wild. Sofia sobbed into her mother's chest. Clara's voice came steady, though every muscle shook. Not tonight. Not her. Not anyone. The watcher tilted his head, as if considering. Then the pressure broke. The hall was only wood again. The shadow folded into nothing. Sofia sagged in Clara's arms, finally asleep. Later, when she carried her daughter back to bed, Clara lingered at the window. The lighthouse loomed in the distance, a silhouette against the restless sea. The bell's hum carried faintly through the night air, brittle and accusing. Marcus stood beside her, arms folded tight across his chest. "He won't stop. You know that." Clara nodded, tears pricking her eyes. "Then we won't either." She thought of Emily's fading outline, of the words carved in the chamber, "One must remain." And for the first time, she wondered if the warning was less about sacrifice and more about survival. End of Chapter 6. Chapter 7. The Bargain Reopened. The town went about its evening as if Havenridge had no secrets. Porch lights blinked on, dogs barked at nothing. Mrs. Kendall carried a pie to a neighbor's door. Clara watched it all from the library window, her reflection pale against the glass. They would never know how close they had come to slipping away. That was Havenridge's curse and its protection. Forgetting was armor, but armor wore thin. Her phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. "Meet me at the cliffs. Bring Sofia." Clara hesitated. He had been pushing himself harder since they found the chamber, bracing the bell, recording the hum, filling notebook after notebook with diagrams of the spiral. He was burning his candle down to nothing. Still, she gathered Sofia and walked into the fog. Marcus stood near the edge, lantern at his feet. The wind clawed at his coat. When he turned, Clara saw the hollow around his eyes. "You hear it too," he said without preamble. Clara nodded. The bell's hum throbbed faintly beneath the roar of the sea. The crack was widening. She could feel it. Marcus lifted his camera, then lowered it. The pictures keep changing. Sometimes the crack's longer, sometimes shorter. I don't know if I'm documenting truth or the hour's edits. Sofia crouched near the lantern, stroking her rabbit's ears. "He's listening," she said softly. "Closer now. He knows we're afraid." Clara crouched beside her. "Don't listen back." But it was already too late. The air shifted, the tide drew breath, and then the watcher was there, stepping out of the fog like it had been painted in, a shadow with edges that refused to stay put. Clara gripped Sofia's shoulders. "Stay behind me." The watcher didn't advance. It simply tilted its head, as if amused. When it spoke, its voice wasn't a sound, but a suggestion pressed into their skulls. "One life for many. You know the pact. Give, and Havenridge is spared." Clara forced her voice steady. "We told you no." The watcher's shape wavered, growing taller, broader. Faces swam within it. Neighbors, strangers, people Havenridge had already forgotten. They reached toward Clara with longing, as though begging her to understand. Marcus cursed under his breath. He's upping the ante. The suggestion came again, heavier this time. Div the child. End the noise. End the cracks. Your daughter is the door. Close it, and all will be safe. Clara's chest seized. Sofia pressed closer against her side, trembling but silent. Clara felt the pull of the words like undertow, the sickening lure of sacrifice dressed up as mercy. No, Clara said, louder this time. You don't get her. The watcher's shadow rippled. For the first time, Clara thought she felt its attention shift. Not to her, not to Sofia, but to Marcus. If not her, then another. A keeper. One must remain. The words scraped along Clara's bones, echoing the message carved in the chamber wall. Marcus stiffened, his breath sharp. He wants me, he said, half to himself. Don't listen, Clara snapped. But Marcus's eyes were wide, pupils blown. Maybe that's the only way. No. Clara's hand closed on his wrist. That's not a bargain. That's a trick. The watcher stepped closer, shadows stretching across the grass like spilled ink. The lantern guttered. The hum of the bell surged, high and sharp, as if the crack itself were listening. And then, like a gust through the fog, Emily was there. Her outline wavered, frayed at the edges, but her braid was the same. Her voice slid between the watcher's pressure, a whisper laced with urgency. Don't listen. He lies. Clara's heart leaped into her throat. Emily. Emily's gaze darted to Sofia, then to Marcus. He wants a keeper, not a trade. The pact was never about giving children. It was about binding someone to the bell. That's how Havenridge held this long. Marcus frowned, torn. Then why carve, remember me? Emily's expression flickered. Because keeping means fading. I didn't want to be gone. Her voice cracked, threads of her form peeling into the fog. But if you give him willingly, he'll own it forever. No coming back. The watcher loomed, blotting out what little moonlight there was. Its voice pressed down again, harder now. Choose. Keeper or child. Door closed or town erased. Clara's body shook, but she held Sofia tighter. We're not giving him anything. Not Sofia, not you, not Marcus. Emily's figure flickered. The bell won't hold forever. And then she was gone. The three of them stood in silence. Only the sea moved, restless and endless. Marcus rubbed his bandaged palms. She's right. If the bell goes, the hour comes through with no resistance. We can't just brace it. We need more. Clara forced herself to meet his eyes. We don't sacrifice. Not Sofia. Not you. Do you hear me? Marcus looked away, jaw tight. I hear you. But Clara wasn't sure he believed it. Sofia slipped her hand into Clara's. He'll try again, she whispered. He doesn't like to wait.
Clara squeezed her daughter's hand, staring at the lighthouse looming in the fog. Then we won't give him what he wants. We'll hold on until we find another way. The bell hummed once, sharp and brittle, as if mocking her vow. End of chapter 7.
Clara's heart leapt into her throat. Emily. Emily's gaze darted to Sofia, then to Marcus. He wants a keeper, not a trade. The pact was never about giving children. It was about binding someone to the bell. That's how Havenridge held this long. Marcus frowned, torn. Then why carve "Remember Me"? Emily's expression flickered. Because keeping means fading. I didn't want to be gone. Her voice cracked, threads of her form peeling into the fog. But if you give him willingly, he'll own it forever. No coming back. The watcher loomed, blotting out what little moonlight there was. Its voice pressed down again, harder now. Choose. Keeper or child. Door closed or town erased. Clara's body shook, but she held Sofia tighter. We'll find another way. Emily's eyes burned with grief and warning. Then you'd better hurry. The crack is almost through. When it splits, no keeper will matter. The wind howled, and the watcher receded into fog as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving the air thick with the echo of its demand. Clara exhaled shakily. We're not giving him anything. Not Sofia, not you, not Marcus. Emily's figure flickered. The bell won't hold forever. And then she was gone. The three of them stood in silence. Only the sea moved, restless and endless. Marcus rubbed his bandaged palms. She's right. If the bell goes, the hour comes through with no resistance. We can't just brace it. We need more. Clara forced herself to meet his eyes. We don't sacrifice. Not Sofia, not you. Do you hear me? Marcus looked away, jaw tight. I hear you. But Clara wasn't sure he believed it. Sofia slipped her hand into Clara's. He'll try again, she whispered. He doesn't like to wait. Clara squeezed her daughter's hand, staring at the lighthouse looming in the fog. Then we won't give him what he wants. We'll hold until we find another way. The bell hummed once, sharp and brittle, as if mocking her vow. End of chapter 7. Chapter 8. The Shattered Memory. The morning after the fog encounter, Marcus didn't show up at the library. Clara assumed he was recovering, maybe finally sleeping. By noon, she walked to his cottage. The front door stood ajar. Inside, Marcus sat at his desk with his notebook open. His pen was moving, but the words were nonsense, loops and jagged marks that crawled over the page like scratches. His eyes were glassy, distant. Marcus? Clara touched his shoulder. He blinked slowly, as if surfacing from deep water. What time is it? 12:30. He looked at the clock on the wall, confused. I thought it was morning. Did I miss it all? You lost hours. Clara's stomach nodded. The hour is leaking into you. Marcus rubbed his temples. He's inside my head. I can feel him editing me. Whole days erased. What if next time it's all of me? Clara wanted to tell him it wouldn't happen, but she couldn't lie. That night, Clara returned to the lighthouse with Sofia. The bundle of braces and wedges felt heavier than before. Each step up the spiral stair groaned. The bell loomed above them, fracture visible in the lantern light. Bronze shimmered with a strange sheen, like water rippling under ice. The hum was louder now, high and shrill, vibrating through Clara's bones. Sofia pressed her palms to her ears. It's breaking. I can hear it screaming. Clara swallowed her fear. Help me brace it. They set the wedges, tapped the mallet against the fittings, tightened the collar as best they could. Clara pressed the salve into the crack, tarry and foul-smelling, smearing it like medicine over a wound that would not heal. For a moment, the hum dipped. Clara exhaled. Then, the air bent. The bell vibrated violently, the sound splitting into two tones at once, high and low, sharp and deep. Clara staggered back. The world tilted and the tower melted away. She stood in another Havenridge. The streets were flooded, water glinting under moonlight. Boats floated where houses should be. People walked knee-deep through black water, faces pale and blurred, their voices swallowed by the tide. No lanterns burned, no laughter echoed. It was Havenridge drowned, silent and strange. Sofia clutched her hand. She was there too, her small body trembling. "Mom, what is this place?" Clara's voice shook. "It's what comes if the bell breaks." The drowned townsfolk turned their heads in unison. Their eyes glowed faintly, like lanterns left too long in fog. They opened their mouths as one, and a chorus poured out. Ragged, hollow, familiar. "We are what you forgot." Clara reeled. She recognized voices, neighbors, friends, her own grandmother. People Havenridge had lost to sea or memory, now standing in this half-made place. The watcher rose from the tide, larger than ever, shadow swelling until it blotted out the stars. Its voice boomed, shaking the water. "This is your future, unless you give, unless you choose a keeper." Clara held Sofia tighter. "No." The watcher reached, the tide rushing with it. Water surged up to Clara's chest, ice cold, dragging her downward. Sofia screamed. And then, Emily was there. Her ghostly form cut through the tide, hands pushing against the water, though she was barely whole. "Don't listen," she cried, voice raw and strained. "This is the split, the bell showing you both sides. One foot here, one in Havenridge. He wants you to panic." Clara gasped, choking on the cold. "Emily! He's tearing it open!" Emily's braid clung wet to her cheek, her face pale with strain. "He's not strong enough yet, but the crack feeds him. Every moment he gets closer. If it shatters..." The drowned Havenridge flickered, the water seething. Clara's grip on Sofia tightened until her knuckles burned. Emily's eyes locked on Clara's. "If it shatters, there won't be two Havenridges anymore. Only his." The vision broke with a thunderclap. Clara was back in the belfry, the lantern swaying wildly. The bell groaned, fracture wider, bronze shivering like it might collapse. Sofia clung to her mother's coat, sobbing. Clara forced her breathing steady. "We hold. We keep bracing. Do you hear me, Soph?" Sofia nodded, tears streaking her face. "We hold." Marcus staggered into the belfry then, pale and sweating. He must have followed them. He stared at the bell, at the crack. "It's worse than I thought." His voice was hollow. "I lost all of yesterday. The hours taking me piece by piece. Maybe I'm already half gone." "No," Clara grabbed his arm. "You're here. Right now, you're here." Marcus met her gaze, broken. "For how long?" The bell gave a final sickening shudder, then quiet, to a whisper. But Clara knew it wasn't victory. It was the pause before collapse. She looked at Marcus's ashen face, at Sofia's frightened eyes, and felt the weight of Emily's warning in her bones. If the bell shattered, nothing,
not braces, not memory, not sacrifice, would keep Havenridge from drowning.
End of Chapter 8.
Chapter 9. The Toll That Breaks.
They went to the lighthouse early, before the town finished pretending at ordinary. Mr. Rourke's broom scraped his stoop, the diner bell chimed, gulls argued over nothing. Clara carried the oilcloth bundle like a first aid kit no doctor had ever seen. Marcus walked beside her, gaunt with too little sleep and too much erasing. Sofia kept pace between them, rabbit tucked in her coat like a second heartbeat. Under, not up, Marcus said, as if reminding himself. We hold from below. Clara nodded. No ringing. Sofia glanced toward the tower, listening the way she did to music no one else could hear. He's already looking this way. The hatch gave under their hands, reluctant and then yielding. The ladder sweated salt. In the chamber, the lantern's circle found the spiral, the words cut into stone, the alcove with its patient tools. The air had a polished feel, as if the hour had already been here, smoothing it with its palms. They set everything where they had agreed, pegs seated, chain laid in the outer groove and looped toward the clevis above, collar tension measured by their own notes, mallet ready. Routine was a charm. Clara could feel the shape of each motion fitting into the next like joints. "Check me," Marcus said, kneeling at the collar. His bandages were fresh, the rope burns beneath were not. Clara leaned in and pressed the knots with her thumbs, felt the give and the memory of give. She didn't say be careful. He didn't say I will. Sofia stepped to the spiral center, lifted her hands a fraction, and breathed in time. If I start to say names, tap my shoulder. I won't let you get that far, Clara said, and kissed the crown of her daughter's head because habit sometimes kept buildings standing. 3:01, the clock in Clara's body told her. 3:02. The lantern flame stretched, as if reaching for something just above it. Far overhead, the braced bell gave a small, brittle sigh. 3:03. The chamber didn't go silent. It filled with a single tone so pure and thin, Clara felt it in her teeth first, then in the old break in her wrist from a college fall, then in the place behind her eyes where headaches are born. The chain twitched. The pegs quivered like animals eager to flee. Hold, Marcus said, voice level by will alone. He put his shoulder to the collar, the rope lifted and sang. Clara set the mallet over the center peg and leaned, spreading her weight the way Emily had taught them. No striking, only presence. Sofia began the rhyme without the words, a cadence pared down to bone. The pressure changed. A second tone joined the first, lower, wider, a depth that made the lantern's halo breathe. Then the voices arrived. They did not speak to the ear. They pressed straight through to memory. Clara tasted cinnamon and diesel and the dime store perfume her grandmother wore to church. She heard a man she almost loved laugh in the exact register she used to follow from room to room. Marcus flinched, eyes shining at a single word said in his father's impatient kindness, "Son." Sophia's mouth parted. For a heartbeat, Clara saw the exact shape of a lullaby that had no words, just the room it had once made safe. "Don't answer," Clara said. "Don't let him in on a name." The voices braided into a chord. It was beautiful the way undertow is beautiful, a smooth, convincing pull. Within it, a thought forming, inevitable as a tide. Give one small life for the rest. Give the door and we will close. The watcher came in the only way it had to come here, through attention. It appeared where the wall met the breathing dark and stepped out of the seam like a man stepping off a train. Its face was the place the eye slid. Its outline was the town's forgetting, tailored to fit. Clara kept her gaze on the mallet, the peg, her daughter's small fists.
"We don't bargain," she said, and found her voice steady. "Not with you." The watcher tilted its head. The tone sweetened, pitying. The spiral's shallow channel glistened. Not water, exactly, but the weight and temperature of water asserting itself. The chain lifted an inch. The pegs walked a breath in their holes. "More," Marcus grunted, leaning into the collar. The rope creaked. His bandages darkened where old burns had never really healed. "He's testing the brace," Sofia corrected and bared her teeth at the air. The bell above them answered. Not a toll, never that, while it held, but a brittle cry as bronze strained against itself. The sound split the high thread into two. The lantern fell to a gutter and caught again. Dust sifted from the unseen beams. A flake of dark metal fell and pinged on the stone. Emily's voice slipped between tones like a fish through reeds. "Don't ring," she warned, close and far at once. "We're holding," Clara said, swallowing the reflex. The watcher shifted. Faces moved inside it. Men with boots salt-stiff, women with flour on their hands, children with a seal's bright eyes. All the town had edited for survival, walking through a door that had become a place. They reached for Clara not to harm, but to be held. Behind them, the watcher spread itself, satisfied. "See, it could all be yours for such a small thing."
Clara did not look up. She did not look at Sofia. She looked at the peg, and at the way her hands knew what to do. She drove the mallet down once, not striking, but planting, as if putting a stake through earth to mark a home. "Not today," she said. It was a prayer made of refusal. Marcus hauled on the collar, as if dragging a boat out of a rip. The rope bit him raw again, and he allowed it. "Coffee at 8, he said through his teeth. And Clara realized he was tying a day to a promise because Emily had told him promises could anchor time. "I'll be there," she said. And in the saying, she felt the peg steady under her palms. Emily flared at the edge of the lantern's range, braid wet with not water. For a heartbeat, she looked warm, human, irritated in the exact way of a girl tired of being brave. "That's it," she breathed. "Hold." The hour thwarted through weather. It slammed down with everything it could shape, a pressure that made teeth click and joints object, a sound that wasn't sound raking across their nerves like wire. The faces tore like paper in wind. The watcher blurred, then sharpened, then misremembered itself and had to reassemble. The chain rose and dropped, rose and dropped, like breath learned the wrong way. Then, in the messy middle of that, something gave above them. Not shattering. The specific, sickening thunk of bronze moving where bronze should not. The bell didn't break. It became less unbroken. The chain fell back into the groove with a clatter that sounded like hope if you bent your head just right. The tone thinned, thinned, snapped. The lantern steadied. The spiral was only stone. The pegs stayed. Clara realized she was crying and didn't know when she had started. The mallet felt carved from her own arms. Marcus slid down the wall and sat with his palms open, torn and trembling. Sofia leaned into Clara's hip, shaking with the ferocious exhaustion of children who had done something impossible and cannot quite believe it. "We didn't ring," Sofia said, listing facts as if doing math. "We held." Clara kissed her hair. "We held."
Emily dimmed. "He'll come back larger," she warned. And in the warning, there was pride. "But you taught him a word." "What word?" Marcus asked, voice a thread. "No," Emily said, already fading. And he heard it. They climbed out when their legs remembered how. The wind at the hatch smelled like kelp and wet iron. In the belfry's slit of sky, the bell hung as before and not as before. A deeper dark along the crack, a posture like a tired animal bracing without knowing for what. Not shattered, not safe. On the path, Clara's phone buzzed. Unknown number. 2 words. Hold fast. She didn't show Marcus. He had already decided what to do. She could feel it gathering in him like weather. She wanted to grab his shirt and shake the decision out, fling it into the scrub where it would dry up and be harmless. Instead, she touched his sleeve, then took Sofia's hand. "Tomorrow," Marcus said, and tried a smile that didn't quite happen. "Coffee at 8. "I'll be there," Clara answered, and in the saying tasted salt that had nothing to do with the sea. The lighthouse hunched against the night. The town below practiced its magic, forgetting what it had to in order to wake. In the thin air between one day and the next, the bell did not ring. But they all felt it, learning how to. End of chapter 9. Chapter 10. One must remain. Morning broke as if the night had been polite. The gulls bickered over bait. The diner bell chimed with forced cheer. Mr. Rourke swept his stoop in even strokes that had nothing to do with fear. Havenridge was good at this, brushing its hair, straightening its collar, pretending the mirror didn't show the crack. Clara opened the library on time. She shelved returns by muscle memory. When the clock over the arch ticked, it hesitated, then remembered which direction to go. At 8 on the dot, the door swung open. Marcus stood in the frame with 2 coffees and eyes that hadn't slept. "Promise kept," he said softly. Clara's throat tightened. He set the cups down and didn't step away from them, like moving would make the moment less real. His bandages were clean. The skin around the wraps was an angry red. "You don't have to," she began. "To say anything," he finished, a ghost of a smile. "I know." Sofia barreled out from the back room, hair wild, rabbit tucked under her arm. "You're late," she declared, grinning. "By 30 seconds, Marcus said, glancing at the clock. "The enforcer is ruthless." Sofia's grin faded as she studied him, the way she listened to walls and water. "You're quieter," she said, puzzled. "Like a room after people leave." Marcus looked past her to Clara. He didn't deny it. They drank the coffee standing up, as if sitting would make decisions too heavy to lift again. The town moved outside the windows, practicing its magic of forgetting. In the back room, a copy of Lighthouses of the Atlantic lay open to a black and white photo of a bell. A hairline ran through the grain where time had once folded the page too roughly. At noon, a fog came in with the tide, fast and unarguable. The bell's hum found the library's bones. Shelves ticked. A paperweight vibrated in place. "Tonight," Marcus said. It wasn't a question. Clara nodded. "Under, not up. We hold." He didn't say anything about bargains or keepers. He didn't have to. The choice sat between them like a third cup of coffee no one wanted to drink. They ate early. Clara forced 3 bites on Sofia and pretended the 4th was dessert. She packed the oilcloth bundle and the lantern. When she tied her boots, her hands shook. She sat on the edge of the bed and watched Sofia wrap the rabbit in a scarf with solemn ceremony. "You'll stay behind me," Clara said. "I know how to hold," Sofia answered, small chin up. "I know," Clara said, "because the truth hurt less when you spread it thin." They met Marcus on the path while the lighthouse loomed like a tired sentinel. The wind came off the water with that brittle metallic edge that meant the hour was already sending scouts ahead. Marcus adjusted the coil of rope on his shoulder. "If he pushes harder, we step away from ringing, no matter what." "No matter what," Clara said. He looked at her a second long, then nodded, as if permission had been granted on all sides. The hatch lifted with its old complaining groan. The ladder sweated salt. The chamber welcomed them with the thin, knife-clean tone that had learned how to live in the stone. The spiral gleamed as if remembering a river. They set the pegs, laid the chain, checked the collar's tension, the knots, the cleavest bite. Routine was a spell. Clara felt it wrap around them as dependable as breath. "Ready?" Marcus asked. Sofia held up the rabbit so he could nod to it like a fourth conspirator. "Ready," she said for both of them. 3:01. The lantern pulled its flame taller. 3:02. The bell above them gave that brittle exhale they had come to dread. 3:03. The hour arrived, like pressure changing in the blood. The thin tone flooded the room, and under it, the deep answering hum of something larger drawing near. The chain flexed. The pegs tried to walk. The spiral's shallow channel turned cold without turning wet. "Hold," Clara said, and set the mallet across the center peg, leaning her weight as if setting a stake in earth. Sofia began the rhyme without words, the cadence alone, breaths bridged to make a small raft. Marcus put his shoulder to the collar until the rope sang. It escalated faster tonight. The lower hum widened into a chord that was almost kind. Voices pressed through, grandmothers and brothers and boys on bikes, women with flour on their hands, all the town had misplaced. They braided into a single suggestion: give one, end the noise, close the door. The watcher stepped out of the chamber's edge like a shadow choosing to be an outline. Its head tilted at Sofia. The cord warmed. "Just one," it breathed. "No," Clara said, steady as a lighthouse beam, and kept her eyes on the peg. The watcher's attention slid to Marcus the way wind slides around a corner and returns from a new direction. "Keeper," it said, the word fitting itself into their thoughts like a key. "Bind, and the town is spared." Marcus flinched, and his hands tightened on the rope until the bandages spotted through. He met Clara's eyes. They didn't speak. Too much could be knocked loose by words. The bell cried from above, a strained, high sound that cut the air into knives. The lantern guttered, dust sifted, a flake of bronze pinged on stone. Emily's voice lifted from the walls, finger now, threadbare. "Don't ring," she whispered. "He wants the sound." Clara swallowed the urge to call her name. "We won't." The pressure crested. The chain jerked 2 inches off the floor, then 3. The spiral's knot water rose to Clara's calves, and her bones ached with cold that wasn't temperature. Sofia shook but held her hands where they were. Marcus grunted. "I'm slipping." "Coffee at 8, Clara said, surprising herself with the fierceness in it. He laughed once, broken, fond. "You terrible enforcer," he told Sofia, and braced harder. The watcher grew, faces swimming inside it. All the lovely bait. Give, it coaxed, patient as gravity. The town wakes happy. The child sleeps. The noise stops. Give. Clara's hands went numb around the mallet. She breathed in fours the way she had when Sofia was born. We hold, she said, to the peg, to her daughter, to the part of Marcus that would do the math wrong if she let him. We hold. The bell screamed. Something above them moved in the wrong way. The rope slid in the clevis a fraction. The chain went slack, and in the same breath rose again, jerked taut by a force Clara felt like a hand on her spine. Emily's voice lifted from the walls, thinner now, threadbare. He's breaking it, she said. He's breaking it from both sides. Marcus's gaze flicked to Clara and back to the collar. What he decided happened inside his body, quietly. He kissed the rope with his palm like a promise and loosened his stance a fraction, enough to slip past the chain instead of resisting it. Marcus, Clara heard herself say, and the word was a thin thing. It's keeping, not giving, he said, and for once his smile reached his eyes. You terrible enforcer, he told Sofia, and set his hands to the stone as if to a friend's shoulders. Count for me, enforcer. Sofia's breath hiccuped. Then she began. Not the words, only the rhythm. Hold my hand, count to 10. Her voice the smallest vessel, the bravest. The knot water surged up over Marcus's wrists, his elbows, his chest. The tone bent around him, like wind discovering a new shape. The chain slackened, then steadied. The collar sang a note that was almost relief. The watcher leaned in, delighted and enraged. Mine, it suggested, hungry. Marcus shook his head without looking up. No, he said, and the word lodged in the stone. I'm hers. I'm theirs. I'm this. He pressed harder. Hold fast. The bell gave a last tearing cry. Something parted above with a sound like a world deciding to be two. Bronze split, from crown to lip, in a jagged seam that had been a hairline for weeks, and now was a wound. Pieces did not shatter, they let go. The room filled with the dust of history. The hum dropped out, the pressure thinned. The watcher blurred like breath on a mirror, then slid backward into the seam it had chosen. Clara crawled forward, choking on dust. The spiral was only stone again. Not water was only cold air. Her hands found nothing where a body had been a heartbeat before. Marcus? She said. Voice scraped raw. The chamber gave back the word without spite. Emily, barely there now, nodded once, proud and ruined. He kept the shape. For now. Come with us, Clara begged, not caring if the grammar of ghosts allowed it. Emily smiled the way she had in the cereal aisle once, hair damp, shoulders shrugged against a cold day. Remember me, she said, gentle. That's how I stay a little. That's how we all do. She dimmed like a wick deprived of air and was gone. Clara pressed her forehead to the stone and let the breath go out of her in a sound that did not need words. Sofia's arms wrapped around her neck, fierce and shaking. The lantern burned steady again, indecently practical. When they climbed out, dawn was loosening the night. The lighthouse hunched against the pale. In the belfry, the bell hung in two unequal halves, still, as moons that had forgotten how to orbit. The town below stretched and yawned. Nets lifted, coffee steamed. Mr. Rourke swept, a little out of rhythm, and then corrected himself. as if a song had skipped and he'd found the beat again. Clara took Sofia's hand and stood a long time on the cliff, not asking the wind for answers. The hour would come again, the bell was broken, the bargain had been refused and still fulfilled. They had bought a day. "We'll find another way," she said into her daughter's hair, into the old stone, into the sea that pretended to be simple. "I promise." Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Unknown number. 2 words. Hold fast. Clara closed her eyes. "We will," she said aloud. And this time the word felt like a door propped open instead of closed. They walked home through a town that had decided to wake. The lighthouse kept its watch without a voice. The sea breathed. Somewhere, in a ledger that wrote and rewrote names, a hand paused, as if remembering. End of chapter 10. End of book 2. We hope you enjoyed yet another thrilling story from Havenridge. Like and subscribe and check back soon for the 3rd book in the Havenridge series. See you soon!